What are the big questions? Who made me, and why am I here? It does not matter whether you are atheist, agnostic, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist. It does not matter. Everybody at some time in their lives asks themselves, who made me, and why am I here?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahi walhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. We will now have, insha'Allah, the talk, and the speaker whom I shall shortly introduce will be Dr. Laurence Brown from the USA, who will be addressing us, insha'Allah, on the topic of the big questions. A brief background about Dr. Laurence Brown. Dr. Brown is a practicing ophthalmologist, the medical director of a major eye and ENT center. He is an ordained interfaith minister and is also the director of interfaith affairs for the Canadian Dawah Association, and is also the author of 6 groundbreaking books of comparative religion. Dr. Brown received his BA from Cornell University, his MD from Brown University Medical School, and his ophthalmology residency training at George Washington University Hospital in Washington, D.C., USA. He now lives in the holy city of Medina, Saudi Arabia, where he continues his work as a medical director and subspecialist in cornea, cataract, glaucoma, and refractive surgery, and writes for a pastime. So I would like to invite to the podium to address us on his topic, the big questions, Dr. Laurence Brown from the USA.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah ma'abad. I greet everybody with the greetings of peace. For the Muslims in the audience, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For all others, welcome. I'm going to be talking today on the subject of the big questions, but before I begin my talk, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Zakir Naik and the Islamic Research Foundation for inviting me to participate in this year's conference. I hope everybody understands the magnitude, the importance of the work that Dr. Zakir Naik and the IRF are doing. I will try in my own small part to contribute to the excellence of that work tonight. So, the first question everybody is probably asking themselves is, what does the title of this talk mean? What are the big questions? Well, the big questions are the questions that everybody at some point in their lives asks themselves. It does not matter whether you are atheist, agnostic, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist. It does not matter. Everybody at some time in their lives asks themselves, who made me and why am I here? Now, I'm going to take these questions in order. I'm going to start with the question, who made me, or in a broader sense, who made us? I am then going to move on to the question, why are we here? What is the purpose of our existence? And then I'm going to move on to the logical extension, the answer that follows even after those two questions. So let's begin with who made us. To begin with, Let's start with how an atheist would answer that question. An atheist, if asked, "Who made you?" will answer, well, nobody, nothing. We, as a creation, are the result of the Big Bang, which brought the universe into existence, and we are the result of evolution, which brought life into existence and the diversity of life as we know it. That is the atheist answer. But does that answer make sense? I would submit that it does not, and here is the evidence. To begin with, let's look at the Big Bang. First of all, let's understand that the Islamic religion does not have any problem with the Big Bang. Islamic religion does not deny that the Big Bang happened. The Islamic religion, however, teaches that the Big Bang was under the control of the Creator. Now, which makes more sense? For us to believe that it was a random event or that it was under the control of the Creator? To begin with, the Big Bang did not start with the explosion. The Big Bang started long before. Before the explosion, there was a primordial dust cloud, a dust cloud in the nothingness of space, which drew together as a massive hyperdense core of mass and energy, and it was that exploded. So where did this dust cloud come from? Where did the primordial dust, where did the energy come from for this explosion? If there is one thing we know from science, it is that we do not get something from nothing. In the explosion, it was the greatest explosion in the history of our universe. It blew everything outward to the universe as we have it today, which is expanding as we know it. And yet we are to believe that this supposedly random event resulted in the perfection of the universe as we know it, whereas any other explosion results in destruction and chaos. We are to believe that the Big Bang resulted in the perfection of the universe as we know it. This is an example where science contradicts science. What do I mean by that? If you are going to explain the universe on the basis of science, you cannot have science contradicting the science that explains the existence of the universe. In science, there is a general principle called entropy. Entropy is the principle that unless there is a greater control over a process, the process tends to chaos. Now let's put it into real-world terms. It does not matter whether you are talking about your child's bedroom, the kitchen sink, your workplace, or a complex chemical reaction. If it is not under control, it generates into chaos. If your child does not clean up his room, if somebody does not control the dishes in the sink, if somebody does not control the chemical reaction, the result is going to be random and chaos. But we are to believe that the massive explosion of the Big Bang resulted in perfection and not chaos. This is an example where science contradicts science. In the same way, when the atheists explain our existence as living beings, they use the example of evolution, natural selection. First, there was a single-cell organism. From the single-cell organism evolved all of life as we know it. But you know, if there's one thing that we know from our lives, it is that if you look at something, you know where it came from. If you look at a painting, you know that there was a painter. If you look at a sculpture, you know that there was a sculptor. If you look at a building, you know that there was an architect and a construction company. And yet we are to look at creation and think that there is not a creator. This is the proposal. The proposal of the atheist is that we evolved by natural selection with the absence of a creator. But I have a question for those who put forward this theory. Natural selection can explain a lot of things. It can explain the diversity of species. It can explain the fossil record. It can explain where the dinosaurs came from and where they went to. But how can you explain where the soul came from? If you believe in the existence of a human soul, how can you explain this as having evolved? For that matter, how can you explain life as having evolved? And what do I mean by life? I mean the power that gives a body, once assembled, to live. We have reached a point in science where we can transplant virtually every organ of the body. We can make a Frankenstein if we so desire, but not all of the world's scientists over the history of mankind, if you brought them all together, cannot make them live. We cannot even make the wing of a gnat in the perfection that it has been made by our Creator. And we cannot give a body life. That is why, once dead, medicine is not able to revive a dead person, even when their organs are still functioning. So, the explanation that we developed from natural selection is another example where science contradicts science. We have the example of millions of years of evolution or natural selection, and the proposal is that everything in our existence, if we don't have some control over it to keep it in order, everything degenerates into chaos, except for the Big Bang and except for evolution. Those two things, just by themselves, they tended toward perfection. Well, there are some people who accept that explanation, but I submit to you that it is not of those who are enlightened, it is not of those who have open minds or open hearts who accept that explanation. The Arabs have a story that they like to tell. A Bedouin is traveling in the desert. He comes upon an oasis, and in the oasis, there is a perfect palace. Now, there are no building materials around. He finds another nomad and he asks him, "Where did this palace come from?" And the nomad said, "Oh, subhanallah, glory to be our Creator, you would not believe where it came from. First, the wind blew so hard that it shaped the rocks into perfect cubes with square edges, and it tumbled the rocks over the desert until they all fell together in the shape of this palace, in perfect assortment. And then the wind blew the dust with some, hairs and fibers from the trees into the cracks and brought the rain, and that made the cement that cemented it all together. And then lightning strikes blasted the sand into sheets of glass and blew the sheets of glass into the windows. And then the elements took wood from the far corners of the earth and shaped it with the wind and the different force of the elements into furniture and into window trim and doors. And tornadoes and hurricanes carry it here and drop the doors into the door places, drop the windows and made the window frames, tumbled the furniture into the rooms. These strong winds took the fibers out of the backs of our sheep, wove them together into tapestries and carpets, and coated the floors with it. And all of this happened just in this one place on earth to make this perfect palace. When we begin thinking about it, we cannot help but roll our eyes and realize, come on, this guy is crazy. This is impossible. And yet what we are told to believe is that the Big Bang and natural selection, through the two most climactic events in the history of creation, accomplished something even greater than this. Let's move on. Why are we here? If we agree that as we are creation, there is a creator, we have to ask the question, why? For what purpose were we created? I ask everybody to look around, not just now, but for the rest of the night. Look around. Everything that you see that we have ever made with the hands of man, we have made for a purpose. What is that purpose? Why have we ever made anything? Anything small or anything big? As far as I'm concerned, and I've never found anybody to say otherwise, we have never created, we have never made anything except to perform a function for us. In other words, we have never made anything except to serve us. Does it not make sense then that our Creator made us to serve Him? In fact, this is what Allah tells us in the Holy Quran when He revealed in the translation of the meaning of the Quran, Surah 51, Ayat 56, quote, "And I, God, have not created jinn and men except that they should serve," and some translate worship, "me," meaning Almighty God, Allah. So that is the purpose of our creation. That is reason for our existence. We were not created in the same way that we do not make anything except for it to serve us by performing a function. In the same way, we were not created except for a purpose. And that purpose is to serve the Creator, to serve and worship the Creator. So how? How do we serve Him? Think about this. Our Creator gave everything a guidance system. We have light to find our way during the day. We have the stars and the moon to find our way at night. This is for seeing animals. Birds migrate by polarized light. That is how they are able to migrate even when there are clouds covering the sky. They can read the polarization of the light even though they cannot see the sun. Other animals migrate by reading the magnetic field of the earth. Whales, lobsters can actually sense the magnetism of the earth and follow it, and that is how they find their way. That was the gift of our Creator to them. Salmon, this delicious fish that we have, leave the place of their birth, go down the river, out into the ocean for years. For years. When they come back to the river they were born in. They fight their way back up to the river to the very spot where they hatched from an egg, and they find their way there by smell. They smell their way from the vastness of the ocean to the river they were born with, back to the exact spot they were born. Bats and river dolphins have sonar. Marine animals in the deep ocean, so deep that there is no light, they can read electrical currents, so they can know where they are. They can find their prey by the electrical currents generated thereby. Insects have pheromones, which are chemicals so sensitive that they can sense a single molecule, and find their ways to food, find their ways to a mate. Plants, our Creator gave plants a unique guidance, phototrophism, by which the stalk grows up, geotrophism, by which the roots go down, and the two never get confused. You never find the roots growing up and the plant growing down. What is my point? My point is that our Creator has given everything in His creation guidance by which it can find its way to the things that it needs, food, a mate, etc. Can we possibly believe for 1 minute that our Creator would have so much mercy that He would give us guidance in all things, give guidance to all of His creation in all things, but He would not give us guidance to the hereafter? Is it possible to believe that? What would be the guidance to the hereafter? Obviously, revelation. Think of us. Think of our lives this way. A minute ago, I was talking about everything that we as man have made with our own hands. I drew the parallel that as we are creation of our Creator, we were created for a purpose. Now, when we make something with rules. It doesn't matter how simple or complex it is. If you have a spoon to eat with, that spoon has rules. You use it right side up, not upside down. You use the bowl of the spoon to eat with. You don't use the handle of the spoon to eat with. Now, this may seem simplistic, and you might say, well, I knew that. That's obvious. It wasn't always. When you were a baby, when you picked up that spoon, you might have picked it up by any end, and it might not have gone to your mouth. You could have put it into your eye if you wanted to, and as a baby, you wouldn't have known that that was not its purpose. But with the simple things, we grow to understand the rules. With the complex things, we don't. And so, the manufacturer gives us a user's manual. We buy a television, we buy a car, we buy a computer. What does it come with? An instruction manual. The instruction manual, by the way, is written by who? When we buy a product, do we ever find that Sony is writing the instructions for Panasonic television? Do we ever find that Ford Motor Company is writing the instruction manual for Hyundai cars? No. The instruction manual is always written by the one who made the product. That is the one who knows it best. So it only makes sense that the instruction manual for us would be written by the one who made us, the one who knows us best. To draw the parallel out a little bit longer, think of any instruction manual you ever read. It starts with what? Warnings. Warning, warning, warning. What will happen if you use this product incorrectly? Then it tells you how to use it correctly and the benefit that you will gain by doing so. And it finishes with what? A troubleshooting guide. How is that different from Revelation? Revelation tells us what not to do and the consequences of that. It tells us what to do and the benefit to be gained thereby. And it gives us a troubleshooting guide. In other words, it tells us how to sort ourselves out if we have a problem, how to correct our deficiencies and guide ourselves aright.